Say yes every day to the world and to your heart. Open up your eyes and let your spirit start. Say yes to the dreams you hold inside. Let your soul be your guide.
Thank you, Concourse Land Transfer, for being a sponsor of the Wednesday Wisdom podcast. If you're looking for a title insurance partner that understands exceptional service and adapts to your lender's unique workflows, well, look no further than Concourse Land Transfer, now accepting orders in all 50 states. They deliver reliable and knowledgeable title insurance services that seamlessly integrate with you and your partner's operations. At Concourse Land Transfer, our expert team is dedicated to ensuring a smooth, secure process every step of the way so you can offer your clients unparalleled confidence. Visit concourseLT.com to partner with them today, because if you're looking for reliable, knowledgeable, and nationwide title solutions, trust Concourse, of course. Thank you for joining us today for another episode of Wednesday Wisdom. And I am so happy that we have a wonderful guest on today. And I want to share the story before I introduce who she is. So last fall, during conference season, I happened to be at a particular conference in Las Vegas, and I stopped to get lunch. Well, there was this young lady in front of me, and I had no idea if she was part of the conference or not part of the conference. We're in the middle of the Paris Hotel, so she could have just been there for another reason. But I thought to myself, she's dressed professional. She looks like she's here on business. So I'm going to strike up a conversation with this particular person. Well, it turned out that we enjoyed lunch together. We got to know each other, and she actually worked for a company that I have done business with throughout my career in the mortgage industry. And the lesson that I learned, and that I always encourage everyone out there, is strike up those conversations. It doesn't necessarily have to lead to a relationship in business or in personal. Sometimes it's just being kind and sharing a piece of yourself. And with that, I would like to introduce our fabulous guest, Alyssa Moreno. She is the National Business Development Executive at Granite Risk Management. And we are so thankful that she is going to share her insights and wisdom with all of us today. So let's kick it off, Alyssa. First question. I'd love to hear, what would you say is one of the best pieces of advice that you have received in your life? And if you would like to give some credit to someone that shared it with you, by all means, give them a shout out.
Absolutely, Laura. Well, first, thank you for the beautiful introduction. Everything happens for a reason, and I'm so blessed and grateful that we had ran into each other that day. So thank you for having me. But I will say the best advice is always be true to yourself in that moment. I was told this at a very young age by my wrestling coach, who happened to be a female as well. And she told me to stay true because it doesn't matter where life takes you. When you look back, you will not have any regret as long as you stay true to your gut and your instincts and your faith in that moment.
Wow. Well, first question I have is wrestling. So you actually wrestled in school. Before I even go into the advice, share that with us. What got you to be interested in that? And tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So I wrestled my whole high school and college. I wrestled, and I was a troubled teen and I had a troubled childhood. So I looked to sports, specifically wrestling, as an outlet to keep me on the correct path in life. I was dealt some crazy cards in life, but I didn't want that to define me. My wrestling coach, his name is Mike Cataline, and Stephanie Cataline, his wife. They were my coaches, and they guided me in a way that here I am. I would not be here today without them, hands down. And they guided me with so much wisdom. But wrestling, I wrestled boys. At the time, there was not women's wrestling back when I was in high school, and it was just starting up. So it taught me a lot about myself, but it also kept me very strong and independent. but it was a
Wow.
great
So
outlet.
why did you select wrestling? I'm very
Great.
curious. Like I
Uh,
understand the sports and keeping yourself on the track, but what was it about wrestling?
Absolutely, great question. I actually cheered and played softball growing up, and when I got to eighth, ninth grade cheer tryouts, I had missed them because they're a year prior. And I had just moved due to my life at the time. And I heard over the intercom that there was wrestling tryouts and women were welcome because there was one female on the team, which happened to be the coach's daughter, who was outstanding, and she's great. I call her my sister to this day. However, I was intrigued. I went to the tryouts and I was little 90-pound Alyssa, and they were kind of like looking at me, you know, very preppy, very this. I went in, they took me in all summer. I trained and I became a badass, excuse my language.
Yeah.
They guided me day in and day out, 2 days. I trained. And the first year I joined the team, I made varsity. So I was a female on the varsity team, which is high for someone that just started. And I started beating all of the boys. Granted, there was a lot of matches I lost, but I won more than I had lost at the time. So
Wow.
just because I missed cheer tryouts and I refused to not let myself not do anything during that season, I tried wrestling, stepped out of my comfort zone, and it was the biggest blessing in disguise because it created and molded me to an amazing young woman at the time to hold my own and not let life take its toll on me.
And fear, right? Because,
Absolutely.
right, there's so much fear
Yeah.
and anxiety over, well, I can't do that. I'm 90 pounds, little Alyssa here. You know, how am I, expected to do this, right? It kind of
Absolutely.
taught you to get out of your comfort zone, to release those fears, to get out of your mind, that might be telling you, you can't do this. You're not strong enough, big enough, good enough, whatever enough, right? So that leads me to my next question. So, okay, so you've gotten this advice of being true to yourself, following your gut instinct. You've had this physical and it sounds like mental training, which
Absolutely.
honestly, I would think a lot of wrestling, it does start here,
I
think.
truly feel it's 90% mental and 10% physical, because if it was not, how would a 90-pound girl beat a man that's 100, or a boy at the time, 120 pounds?
Yeah.
Naturally.
Yeah.
And they're cutting down weight. So naturally they're bigger than me and stronger than me genetically. So yes, to your point, mentally, I believe it's 90% mental.
Yeah. So now, how did you take that advice, right? And everything that you've learned, from your wrestling training and these great coaches and mental and physical strength, how have you applied that now, fast forward into your current life now, personally and professionally?
Great question. As you know, I'm a female in a male-dominated industry. So work-wise, I feel and I know that I have implemented it to never back down to a man. And I know that I'm not trying to get into that. However, I was a female in a male-dominating sport for 9 years.
Right.
Now I'm in an industry that's the same concept. So I need to be mentally strong as well as confident in order to be successful and succeed. Because people in general will try to diminish if you're a woman sometimes. In this industry, I learned at a young age because I do look young. But then once I'm able to just stand my ground, you gain that respect very fast. So that's in the professional world. When it comes to my personal life, it's 2024. Life is insane. I don't need to go into detail there. Anxiety, depression, all of that stuff plays a huge factor in everyone's life. In the last 5 years, shall I say, with COVID and so much more, that I've had to stay mentally strong as a single mother of a special needs boy more than I have ever in my life. And I always resort back to my wrestling days of how hard I trained to be successful or achieve a state title or a national title and what I had to do to get there. And every single day for months, I felt I was going to fail and I always succeeded. So even in this, where it's like month by month by month, I would want to give up, but I knew I could not, and I knew I would not, because mentally I was already strong enough. And I knew that no matter what I did, I was always going to be okay and be successful, because my whole entire life has always been trials and tribulations, and I've always came out on top. And I know I was taught that through the sport of wrestling, which is absolutely beautiful. But now as an adult and a mother, I implement those in my day-to-day life.
I love that.
So,
It's very interesting, Alyssa. Just this past month, we had a guest on our Women with Vision monthly mastermind. Her name was Alyssa, right?
Okay.
Alyssa Agent, spelled exactly the same, right? And as you're speaking, I'm kind of thinking of a few lessons that she was teaching us, where she's a bodybuilder and her book is about strength, but not necessarily physical strength. It's kind of what we were saying. It's a combination of mental mindset and physical strength. And as you were speaking, I was thinking about something that she said, where as women, we have to go in taking up more space than we physically take up. Think about that, right? So think of you, right, as this petite woman that's going in and wrestling these larger, physically larger gentlemen, but you were taking up more space, maybe not physically, but in your training, in your capability, in
Right.
your momentum, in your mindset, and your desire to go after the win, right? In that competition. So you learned, and then you've taken that and applied that in the professional world in a male-dominated industry where you show up. I love the image of the little kitty cat and then the lion is in the mirror, right? It's that image where you are this little petite, woman, but yet you're really not. You're that lion, right? You're taking up that space of saying, I'm confident, I'm educated, I'm professional, I'm an expert, I know my craft, and I'm here to help, right? I'm here to execute, I'm here to accomplish my goal, whatever that is, right? And it also takes me back again of that moment that we met, that it brings me back as you were speaking about your son, that I remember we were speaking and your phone rang. And your son, I can't remember if he was just getting off the bus or I remember he was just coming home from school. And I remember you having a conversation, just asking about his day and all of that. And I remember in my heart, it just warmed me because, of course, I thought of my children at that age. And I thought to myself, here is this strong woman that she's here doing business, she's on travel, she's showing up, she's networking and doing her thing, yet she's also raising a young man, right? That will be there for the future of men in the world. So Alyssa, I want you to realize that we see you. We
Thank
hear
you.
and we want you to continue showing up in your wonderful, sleek view of being that kitty cat, but yet being the lion when you're showing up to do your business, right? I love it. I love it.
Thank you.
All
I
right.
love that. I love that analogy.
All right, Alyssa. Now, what we'd love to hear at this point to wrap us up is what is your piece of advice that you would like to give to the audience? Something that you would like to share based on this point in time?
That's a great question, Laura. I feel like I could go two ways with this. But one thing I can say personally as a single mother, and I'm not speaking to single mothers, but it resonates with myself, is to always protect yourself emotionally, mentally, and financially. Because anyone can get to us mentally day to day and emotionally, which is going to affect our day-to-day life inside our home when it comes to work and the people that are around us. I always tell people your smile and your demeanor can change someone's life drastically within one smile or one conversation, and you do not realize. I am so sorry. You do not realize that. So I always say to protect yourself mentally and emotionally, and I go on and say financially, because tomorrow's this job industry, we've all been there. It's not promised. So be mindful in your day-to-day decisions, whether that's simply cutting out little things to make sure you're okay for the next 3 to 6 months financially. If it's Starbucks, if it's your nails, whether, you know, it's a gym membership, there's alternatives to these things. And if we need to do it, there's a way to do it. And sometimes we need to do it in order to set ourselves up for the future. And I only say that because I've been in that boat in the past and I had to learn the hard way, but I have gotten advice from amazing women and men that are very successful that I hold true to this day. So to protect yourself mentally, emotionally, and financially.
Number one, phenomenal advice for every single person out there, and especially in our industry, right? So the first thing that you said is kind of how we started this conversation. I learned a long time ago that you never know what someone is going through. Never. No matter what the outside looks like, everyone is dealing with something, and you don't know what that is. So
Right.
that smile, that kind word, that conversation sometimes can be the difference that you never realize what that impact is. So that's number one. So thank you for that. The financial part, man, I've been in this industry so long, and every time, no matter how many times we hear it, our industry is very cyclical. At one moment, you could be riding high and you think it'll never stop. Guess what? It always stops. There's always cycles. And so good advice, make sure you have that rainy day fund and you have that, oh no, the hot water heater just broke, the car broke down, the whatever, right? Whatever the situation is, make sure, regardless of how high you may be doing or medium or even a struggle, even if you're struggling, put the tiniest bit away, because that extra $10 that goes in, that adds up and adds up and adds up. You could wind up with a couple $1,000s in the long run that you're like, thank goodness I put that away. So it's not about the amount. It's about the consistency. Like you said, giving up, the gym membership and just walking around outside instead or whatever, right? That little bit goes a long way. Alyssa, fantastic advice and wisdom shared here. I loved hearing a little bit about the wrestling, just blew my mind. And I thank you so much for sharing all of that, and keep shining brightly, because you are absolutely a beacon of light and hope for everyone out there to realize that regardless of what adversity you may have felt or how you grew up or whatever your story is, we all have our stories. That doesn't change what our future looks like. We can start right now, regardless of where we are. We can start today and make that change. Thank you,
Miss
Alyssa.
Laura. I appreciate you.
Have
Thank
a
you
great
so
one.
much. You too. Bye-bye.